You know, we've had a lot of people in the hospital and different things happening to people, and it made me think about some of these things. Um, and you don't have to listen to this because this is a joke. But when they take your appendix, you know, they call that an appendectomy. When they remove your tonsils, they call that a tonsillectomy. What is it when they remove a growth from your head? Anybody know? A growth from your head. It's called a haircut. Okay, let's get started. We're starting a new series for this month, and the new series is going to be Jesus and the Temple. So we're going to look at several different ways that Jesus interacts with the temple. And I wondered how interesting this might be, but it is pretty interesting when you start looking at it. I don't know how many of you have seen The Chosen this season, where Jesus overturns the tables at the temple. Quite interesting. We're going to be looking at that with Jamie on the third week. But let me do a few announcements first, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. July 7th through 9th, we've got the Ridge Kids Day Camp coming up. That's coming up real quick the next week. And then we've got the people, I think it's 17 people going to Colonia 89 mission trip. And then we have the 49ers Fellowship on July 11th, and the baptism class kicks off again on July 13th. So we need to be in prayer for those people going on the mission trip and for the kids. Say what? It starts the 20th instead of the 13th? Ah, they must have changed it. Okay, because I looked at the last week's announcement sheet. Or it could be that there's one today also, but I don't know. Anybody need clarification on that? Okay, so probably the 20th. I'd go by what's in the today. So this series that we're going to be doing this month is about Jesus and how he interacts with the temple. And today we'll be looking at the boy Jesus and the temple. And this is pretty interesting. And then we'll look at the Lord of the Sabbath next week. Then Jamie will take over while I'm in Camp Heavenbound, and he'll be looking at the cleansing of the temple, which is in John. And then the last week I'll be back, Jesus predicts the temple's destruction. So when we talk about Jesus being 12 years old, I just wanted to get our heads straight about a 12-year-old. If we look around at Pleasant Ridge, we can see some 12-year-olds. There's Addie. She is 12. Archer, he's 12. Logan, Mann is 12. Riley, Bristol, and McKinley. So just to let you know what a 12-year-old is like, think about those kids. And we can look at a typical boy that's 12 years old, and often they're right there in the midst of puberty. And they're experiencing these physical changes coming on. Their voice is getting a little deeper. Sometimes it cracks. They've got some facial hair coming on. They may even try to shave with their dad's razor at this time. But they are navigating some emotional ups and downs at this point. Sometimes they'll be real happy, and then sometimes they'll be in the depths of despair because of something that's happened to them. But they do have this developing interest in social interactions and their peer approval. That becomes more important to them. And then you also see some signs of increased independence. They want to do things on their own. They want to start learning how to do things on their own. And that causes sometimes for them to question authority. 12-year-olds, they're developing more complex thinking skills. So, if we think about Jesus and what he was like as a 12-year-old, we don't have a lot in the Bible that tells about him as a 12-year-old. But I want you to be thinking about what a 12-year-old is like, because sometimes when we think of Jesus, we think of him as God and all-knowing and be able to perform miracles. Yet you have a 12-year-old Jesus that we're going to get a glimpse of in the temple. And that's what we want to look at today. What was Jesus like as a 12-year-old? Well, in Luke 2, 41 through 42, it says that each year Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. Now, when he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival, and that was according to their custom. You see, this was Jerusalem where they needed to go. Now, you think about this journey from Nazareth to Jerusalem. That's 86 miles. So it's going to take about 3-4 days for them to get there, because they could take a shorter route, but that would go through Samaria. So they end up going along the River Jordan as they go down to Jericho and then into Jerusalem. And that takes 3 or 4 days. So it's quite a journey. And the reason they're going there is for Passover. And Passover in Hebrew is called PRcoC. It's a major Jewish holiday, and it's there to commemorate the liberation of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. And we know that is the Exodus. There's a lot of different rituals that they go through. One of the very important ones is the Seder meal. And it could last 7 or 8 days. During that time, leavened bread is prohibited. I mean, you can imagine they're going all through the house to make sure there's not any leavening in the house where they're going to have this ceremony. So that's where they're going to Jerusalem to have the Passover festival. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus, this 12-year-old boy, stayed behind in Jerusalem. But they were unaware of it. So, of course, you recognize this probably when this boy, probably about the same age, realized he was home and his parents were not. He was home alone. And all of a sudden, it just overcame him. What am I going to do? What was Jesus thinking when he realized his parents and all the relatives that he came with and all the people from Nazareth that had probably come down together? Because this is a long trip. And you can imagine that there would be bad people all along this trip that would like to take advantage of some of these travelers. And so you travel in a large group. Well, now his large group is gone. They've left, and he's there by himself. A typical 12-year-old might be beside themselves. But they do have this longing for independence. So you have this struggle. I want to be here. I don't. I want to be with my parents. So what does Jesus do? Well, thinking he was in their company, they traveled for a day. That's approximately 20 miles, 20 or 23 miles. They've traveled already. And they haven't realized he's not with them. Why not? Because, well, just like in Home Alone, there was a huge group. And so they're thinking that he's with some of the other people. Maybe he's further back. He's with his friends. They're probably messing around. And they don't realize that they left him behind until one day later. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. And when they didn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem. Imagine Mary realizing that they've left Jesus there. She knows she's responsible for the Son of God. She is responsible for the Messiah. She's responsible for Jesus Christ. And all of a sudden, she realizes he's left behind. Now remember, they were on a long journey back to Nazareth. They had probably gone 20 miles, and now they've got to do a U-turn and come back and find him. Have you ever been there when all of a sudden your child or your grandchild is not at your hand, and you're looking around and you are scared half to death because where are they? It could be that you were in a store or at the mall, when you used to go to the mall, and all of a sudden you realize your child is not there where you thought they were. Now, we've been there. We found them hiding inside one of the clothes racks, that was around like this. They thought that'd be funny. And then you get them out and everything's okay. But sometimes it's not. I went to the website missingkids.org, and I looked at some of the ones right now that are missing. Brooklyn, Lydia, Samantha, John, Monica, Margaret, Miracle, Londra, and Ashley. I just picked a few that were from our area that are missing. And you put yourself in those parents' place, it's traumatic. And we think about right now, this weekend, what's going on down in the hill country with 27 girls that have been swept away and are missing, not knowing, are they alive? Are they dead? It's an awful feeling. And this website that I went to, missingkids.org, it allows you to be able to help in some way by scanning this QR code and viewing the posters of the kids that are missing and seeing if maybe you've seen one of them. Maybe you can help a parent. But this happens more often than we want to think about. Well, after 3 days, now we read quickly through that, but think 3 days. I mean, I was scared when I couldn't find one of my kids and they were just in the clothing rack and it was only 5 minutes that I was looking for them. But think about 3 days and you're traveling slowly, as fast as you can walk, but back to Jerusalem. I want to show you this picture because when you get to Jerusalem, they say there were probably about 2.5 million people there for Passover. You don't just find a little boy and 2.5 million people real quickly. So they took a day to get back, another day to find him. Well, they found him sitting among the teachers in the temple courts, listening to them and asking them questions. Whew. 2.5 million people, and they did find him. Well, everyone who heard Jesus was amazed at his understanding of their answers and his answers. So here's this 12-year-old, and I'm sure they're thinking he's like a genius. And I don't know if you've watched Young Sheldon, but young Sheldon went to college when he was like 12, 14. I don't know. Maybe he graduated from college when he was 14. It is all made up. But you see everybody being amazed at his intellect, his understanding. And somebody that young, it just amazes you when they have that amount of knowledge and understanding. And so Jesus was amazing them. And you can imagine them, they've been studying the Torah for years and years and years. And here's this 12-year-old that's understanding things, maybe that they've questioned themselves. So they were amazed. Aren't we amazed at Jesus? We sing a song, I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene. And he is amazing because we know what he's done, that he's overcome death, that he sacrificed his body for us, that he was risen, and that he went back to heaven to prepare a place for us. We're amazed at him now even more than they would be at that time. But we should be amazed. Well, when his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." I can't imagine that's all she said. I'm sure that he made it concise, because you can imagine her looking at him face to face, and he's been enthralled with these teachers of the law, and she's grabbed him, she's hugged him, then she pulls him back. I can imagine this. In fact, let me show you this news article, and it may come up with a YouTube advertisement at first. We have to work through that, but let me see.
Within 5 minutes, we were out in the woods looking for him. Totally lost. We combed the neighborhood alone, and couldn't find him. Within 20 minutes, no, so we called the police.
It was a terrifying day for parents in North Tonawanda when 2 children wandered off into the woods, and that terror turned into immense relief when officers came back with the little girls. News 4's Ed Durant shows us video of the emotional reunion that you'll see only on 4.
Yeah, it was an emotional day indeed. Neighbors were standing in their front yards watching this all unfold. When we got there, everyone was hugging, shouting, "They've been found." Jennifer Cars ran to be reunited with her 3-year-old daughter, Anastasia, her bare feet slapping the sidewalk with each step.
I'm just so glad she's back with me.
Anastasia and her 3-year-old friend, Trent, had been playing in the backyard. All of a sudden, they vanished. Cars said she got some neighbors together to search for them. With no luck, that's when they called police.
My husband called me when I was out searching, and he says they found her, they're on their way here, and that's all I know.
Anastasia told me exactly what happened.
I was at Trent's house in the woods.
You were in the woods?
Yes.
And what were you doing in the woods, sweetheart?
On the way back home.
Trying to find your way back home?
Yes.
Were you scared?
Yes.
The search for these curious kids lasted about an hour. They started off wandering this trail looking for mice. They wandered a little too far. About a mile away from home, police say when they were found, they were crying.
You can't imagine what runs through your head when your 3-year-old is missing.
John Cars, her father, became emotional at the very sight of his little girl.
She's suddenly gone, and you don't know where she is. The helplessness is something is totally incapacitating.
And now, how are you feeling?
More relieved than I've ever felt in my entire life.
Relieved, the 2 friends were found alive and unharmed. And are you happy to be back with Mommy now?
Yes.
Police say it's very important parents keep a close eye on their children this time of year.
Watch what Gen X do to stop heartburn.
Heartburn.
Yeah, it's all from your diet.
So how do you stop it?
Stop eating plants that are trying to kill you. Don't eat corn. The average American is 70%
Okay, stop.
corn.
Stop. Okay. Hey, we're back. So 3 days that Jesus was missing, and she was searching for him among 2.5 million people, and finally found him. So how did he respond? "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. Why were you searching for me? I mean, that's a strange thing for him to say. He was oblivious, because he was so oblivious to them and how they felt. And I don't know, sometimes that's the way kids are. I remember when I was little, I must have been like 3, 4, 5, I don't know how. My mom tells me this story. But I decided that it would be a safer place for me to be when it was raining or thundering, and to get under their bed. And so I went in their room and got under the bed and went to sleep. Next morning, she comes back into the bedroom and says, "Kenneth, get up. Steve's gone." And he said, "What?" And I'm watching their feet, going all around, getting dressed. He's going outside, and I'm thinking, this is funny. I look back on it and I go, that was not funny. But at the time, I thought, why are they so upset? I don't know why Jesus said that. Maybe it was to set up this. Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house? But they didn't understand what he was saying to them. And I understand that. Why they wouldn't understand. But you think about Jesus' mission. He was on a mission. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. He is beginning his training to seek and save the lost. I've got a book called The Power of Focus by Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, and Les Hewitt. Ever so often I start to lose focus, and I'll look over at that book and I think, I need to read that, and then I get distracted by something else. And yet the power of focus, have you ever been there where you focus on one thing and you get it done and you feel great? But we've also been there where, like, I'll go out in the garage to start working on something and oh yeah, and I'll go over there and I'll fix that, then I'll go over here and fix that, and I'm unfocused. But when you are focused on an objective, and I believe Jesus knew his objective and he knew his purpose, I would be in my Father's house. He was focused. Well, what happens next is that he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. You know, it says, "Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord." Paul said that to the Colossians. But I know Jesus wanted to please his parents too. And yet, he has a mission. Now, the funny thing is, the next verse says something that seems a little odd. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. So, she treasured that he was lost? What did she treasure in her heart? Was it that he was in his Father's house, that he was beginning his mission? I don't know. There's so many things that she remembers about Jesus. And in The Chosen, I love the scene at the beginning of one of the episodes where John is in his later years. And he's called some of the apostles together, and Mary's there. And he's sitting down and interviewing each one for what they remember. And he's writing it down. I don't know if that's really the way he did it or not. But to see Mary sitting across from John and remembering about Jesus and telling him about when Jesus was young and how it scared her to death when he was lost. But she treasured all these things in her heart. And in The Chosen, when he's interviewing her, Jesus has already died. He was crucified. He also was resurrected. And he also ascended into heaven with many promises and with charges to his disciples. And so she did treasure these things in her heart. And then this 12-year-old boy grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Jesus is someone who we should be amazed at. Everyone in this world should be amazed at Jesus Christ. Not just the 12-year-old boy, but the man that he grew into and the God that he is, the Savior that he is. So, I have a challenge for you. Wow, this lesson went over quick, didn't it? I have a challenge for you, and that is this week, focus on Christ. Focus on Christ in your prayers, in your study. In fact, here's a few suggestions. Set aside time for prayer. Set aside time for Bible study, for meditation. And just think about Jesus Christ. Dwell on Him. Avoid some distractions that normally take over your thoughts, especially while you're focusing on Jesus. I love the way you're surrounded by other Christians right now. Continue to do that. Surround yourself with Christians. I suggested you watch The Chosen on Prime Video. It helps you focus on Jesus because as you see the Lord's, the Passover meal, the Seder meal that they're going through in season 5, as you see that in detail and you think about the things that were going on at that time, it really helps you with your focus on Jesus and His mission. And practice self-discipline this week. Make a conscious effort to avoid temptations. And I know that requires sacrifice and it requires discipline. But the rewards are worth the sacrifices. So that's Jesus in the temple as a 12-year-old boy. And next week, we're going to go on and look at more of Jesus' interaction with the temple. Right now, I want to enter into a time of prayer. And